Hare Krishna. So I'm very, very happy to be here again. This is a wonderful location in the middle of the forest, although we are still in Sydney. And particularly I'm happy to see so many devotees who have gathered here, not just from Sydney, but from many other places also. And I hope we will have some interesting and Krishna conscious time together today and also tomorrow. Thank you very much for taking the time off and taking the trouble to come all the way from your respective homes over here. So we will start with some kirtan, Jai Radha Madhava, and then we will go on. As you know, the topic is the divine and demoniac within. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare
Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Radha Gopinath, Radha Gopinath, Radhe. Jai Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai, Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai. Jai Jagannath, Jaya Jagannath, Baladeva, Jaya Subhadra. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajakacarya. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Shri Shri Radha Gopinath ki jai, Shri Shri Gaurnitai ki jai, Shri Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Mai ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam yena bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadam Mahyam Dadati Svapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuddhapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So today and tomorrow we're going to be discussing the divine and demoniac within us. As you know, there are these two natures that are found in this world. It is very important that we cultivate the right kind of qualities and characteristics that are essential for our spiritual development and for our successful human life. Today, unfortunately, people simply want to become wealthy. They want to enjoy sense gratification as much as possible. But very few people think in terms of developing sublime qualities, becoming endowed with very good qualities, transcendental or divine qualities that will actually facilitate our spiritual development. I think the children we will have to manage somehow so that there's no disturbance due to the children. There is a children's program outside, yes?
Yes.
Yeah, so then children should probably, smaller children should all be there, I think. So we are also going to talk about the 16th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, because this is the chapter that in which Krishna actually in detail discusses this topic. The 16th chapter is called the Divine and Demoniac Natures. Daivasura Sampada Yoga. So there's two kinds of qualities. Sampada means qualities, and there is Daiva, which means divine, and Asura means demoniac. So the yoga, the knowledge that speaks about these two kinds of natures is found in the 16th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. So we are going to be basing a substantial part of our discussion on this 16th chapter. So in this 6th verse of the 16th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, please chant after me. Dvau bhuta sargo lokesmin Daiva asura evacha Daivo vistarashah prokta Asuram partha me shrinu. O son of Pritha, in this world, there are two kinds of created beings. One is called the divine, and the other demoniac. I have already explained to you at length the divine qualities. Now hear from me of the demoniac. So before we go on to discussing what these divine qualities are and what the demoniac qualities are, let's consider the first half of this verse. Krishna says, Bhuta Sargo. Sarga is the creation, Bhuta means the living entities. So of all the living entities, Loke, in this world, Loke Yasmin, there are two kinds, Dvau. So all the living beings in this creation can be divided into two categories, Daiva, Asura, Evacha. One are those living beings who are divine and those who are demoniac.
Now, these two categories of people or living entities have always been there. It's just that the proportion has varied from time to time. In Satya Yuga, you found people were mostly divine, and there were very few demoniac people. And in Kali Yuga, we find a larger proportion of demoniac people and very few endowed with a divine nature. Daivi, Prakriti. Prakriti means nature. Sampada means qualities. So in this chapter, Krishna is going to talk about Daivi Sampada and Asuri Sampada. Divine qualities and demoniac qualities which are based upon Daivi Prakriti and Asuri Prakriti. See, the qualities are born of these natures. Divine qualities are born out of divine natures. The demoniac qualities are born out of demoniac natures. It is said that in Satya Yuga, the divine and demoniac living entities lived on different planets of the universe. Then in Treta Yuga, they lived on the same planet but in different countries, like Ram in Ayodhya and Ravana in Lanka, for example. So we see that as the 4 ages progress, there is a gradual deterioration in everything divine and a rise in everything demoniac. Then when Dwapar Yuga came, they started living in the same country but in different cities. Say the Pandavas and living in Indraprastha and the Kauravas living in Hastinapur. And now in Kali Yuga, the divine and the demoniac, they live within each of us. They live within our heart. So both the demoniac person, the Asura, and the Daiva, the divine person, both reside in our heart. And I'm sure we've all experienced that battle and the competition within for supremacy. Sometimes the divine within us emerges victorious, and then we come for the weekend retreat that deals with divine and demoniac natures. And we decide to focus our attention on Krishna consciousness. And sometimes the demoniac within us emerges victorious, and we think it's not so important to go for Krishna conscious association, and then we switch on the television or we do some other un-Krishna conscious act. So there is a constant battle going on, fierce battle between the demoniac and the divine within us. And that's the reason this seminar has been titled The Divine and Demoniac Within. So it's not just that we are talking about somebody else being divine, someone else being demoniac, but both these elements are very strongly present within us. In Kali Yuga especially, these two are here fighting it out, battling it out. In general, in this age, the demoniac tendency is more powerful. But nevertheless, these two are very much part of our existence. We cannot deny it. Even though the incidence is less, but we do see people endowed with a divine nature. Largely we see people endowed with a demoniac nature. So the question arises, what exactly then is the difference between the two? What is the demoniac nature and what is the divine nature? Of course, these details, the qualities we will talk about later. But in brief, Krishna has given us a very succinct answer. He says, basically those who live their life according to the Vedic scriptures or according to scripture, they are divine. Those who lead their life whimsically, without following the scriptures, without reference to any authority of the Lord, they are demoniac. Very simple. Can we have the 23rd verse up of the same chapter? So therefore, what is the conclusion? And this is what Krishna is going to speak about at the end of the 16th chapter, where he concludes that the difference between the divine nature and the demoniac nature is that those who are of a divine nature follow the scripture, and those who are not of the divine nature, that is, they are of the demoniac nature, they don't follow scripture. So yes, now we will chant text 23, in which Krishna describes basically what is the destination of those who don't follow the scripture. The scriptures give us various types of instructions, injunctions, do's and don'ts. Just like the law book of any country gives the citizens various do's and don'ts. So today I believe is double, what's it called? Double fine or something? Double demerits. Yeah, so today everyone is really cautious, crawling on the streets, not going fast. So there's don'ts and there's do's. So everywhere we find this. So even in the Vedic scriptures, there are do's and there are don'ts. The idea being that by following these do's and don'ts, we will subdue the demoniac within us and the divine within us will rise, will get nourished and will become more prominent. And then when the divine nature becomes so prominent that it becomes all-encompassing for us, it becomes all-pervasive in our consciousness. Our consciousness becomes pervaded or suffused with these transcendental qualities, then we are well situated to rise on the platform of complete self-realization, of spiritual perfection. So the reason we want to understand this topic of divine and demoniac natures very nicely is because it is so practical and so relevant for us. We have to subdue the demoniac and we have to make the divine prominent. And the way to do that is by understanding what the scriptures say. When the scriptures are followed very scrupulously under the proper guidance, then gradually, with knowledge, with practice, with proper guidance, then one's divine nature starts flourishing, starts flowering. Our whole nature, our whole personality, our whole consciousness, everything changes. So the ultimate goal is that we should have a civilization, a society, the whole world full of people with divine nature. That was what it was in Satya Yuga, where everyone was virtuous, everyone was pious, everyone was spiritually inclined. Sometimes there were exceptions. You had a Hiranyakashipu here or you had somebody there. But these were the exceptions more than the rule. But by and large, people were just of one category, Hamsa. Hamsa means like swans. They were pure-hearted, virtuous. Everyone naturally followed, spontaneously followed the scriptures and this path of spiritual realization. So the 23rd verse of the 16th chapter, Krishna indicates, which is the end of the 16th chapter, the second last verse, he indicates what happens when somebody doesn't follow the scriptures. Yah shastra vidhimutsrijya vartate kamakaratah nasa siddhim avapnoti na sukham na param gatim. So yaha means who. So whoever. No. That's not this verse. Yes. So yaha means anyone who. Shastra vidhim
Vidhi means the injunctions. Shastra Vidhi means the injunctions of the scriptures. Utsrija means to give up. So anyone who discards or rejects, in other words, does not follow the injunctions of the scriptures and instead acts whimsically, kama karataha. Kama refers to lust, meaning we do whatever we like, whatever comes to our mind. Karataha means acts. So a person who acts whimsically without following the scripture, such a person, na siddhim avapnoti. He can never attain perfection. Na sukham, neither can he get happiness in life. Na param gatim, neither can he obtain the ultimate destination of life. So the principal quality of the demoniac is they don't like to follow the injunctions of the scriptures. They want to act whimsically. What is the meaning of acting whimsically? Who would like to offer an explanation? What is whimsically? Acting whimsically? Yeah? What is the meaning of acting whimsically? Any idea? What's the meaning of acting whimsically?
Or as you said, doing whatever you like.
Yes. Very simply put, doing whatever we like. Sometimes it may be right and sometimes it may be wrong, but mostly it's wrong. Whatever comes to my mind, I want to do it. Just like a child. Does a child act rationally? A child acts whimsically. Whatever he or she feels like doing at the spur of the moment, impulsively, the child just does it. Doesn't consider time, place, circumstance. The child will not consider there's a seminar going on now. I should not speak loudly. I feel like shouting, I will shout. I feel like lying down, I will lie down. But adults will understand, well, I'm sitting here, at least everyone's looking at me, I can't. What to speak of lying down, even if I close my eyes, I better open it quickly. We are conscious always. But for children, they do whatever they like, whatever comes to their mind. And similarly in this world, people who act whimsically do so because they think that whatever they think is right. Whatever they think is all right. Therefore, I can do anything I like, and it's all right because I'm thinking so. And because I'm acting like this, therefore it's fine. So this is called whimsical living. And people think like this in the name of freedom. Because they think this is freedom to do whatever I like, to have rules and regulations imposed on us is something very difficult. It curbs our freedom. So when we are coming here, I'm sure many people who were driving the cars were thinking under their breaths, they must have been muttering a few things about the traffic authorities, that they have to go so slow. Why are they doing this? It's a holiday, we want to race the car. So generally, nobody likes to follow rules. It's nature, it's the conditioning of the demoniac nature. The conditioned soul in this world doesn't like to follow rules. We want to use our independence any which way. But the divine nature understands that, well, there may be some trouble in following rules, but if I don't follow these rules, there will be even more trouble. Or as you say here, there will be trouble big time. A lot of trouble. Just imagine if there is no traffic rule and anyone drives any way they like. Now when you drive and there's lots of rules, it's a botheration. You have to stop at a red light, you have to slow down at some point, you have to indicate signals, you have to do so many things. You have to be alert all the time. But if you thought that let me be free, why have all these curbs on my freedom? Let me just drive any way I like and live a free life.
and then you drive at any speed, in any direction, turn left, right, anywhere you like. And if everybody does that, what is going to happen? Chaos, devastation. So we may think that there is trouble because of following rules and regulations. But we have to tolerate that trouble, because if we don't, there will be much more trouble later on. So the divine nature thinks and is willing to follow rules for a higher purpose. But the demoniac nature doesn't like to follow. The demoniac nature doesn't understand that voluntarily accepting curbs on our freedom is actually a cause of giving us a lot of freedom. This is the ironical or paradoxical part, that when you voluntarily restrict your own freedom, you actually become free. Now you can drive freely anywhere, everywhere in Sydney or outside Sydney also. But if you don't follow the rules and regulations, you get ticket after ticket, and then your license is confiscated, and then you lose all your freedom to drive. Whatever freedom you had is also lost. So here is the irony of it all. By restricting our freedom voluntarily, we actually get a lot of freedom. But by not accepting curbs on our freedom, we lose all our freedom. So similarly in life, just as there are laws in the country, there are also laws in the universe. So the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna has made laws that are given in the scriptures, meant for all of us. And these laws may appear to be very difficult for us to follow. They may appear to be bothersome. But if we tolerate that inconvenience that comes as a result of following these rules, we will actually become free. Real freedom means to become free from the bondage of the three modes of material nature, from the bondage of material nature itself, and then to rise to the spiritual platform. Those who don't want to accept curbs on their freedom, so-called freedom, they end up getting more and more firmly bound in the cycle of birth and death. It's a very vicious bondage. And we will see, Krishna will describe in the middle part of this chapter, or towards the later part, about what happens to those who are demoniac, who act whimsically. But essentially, Krishna has concluded this chapter by speaking about what it means to be demoniac. Demoniac means a person who rejects and doesn't follow the instructions of the scriptures. And what is the result? Neither any perfection, nor any happiness, nor the supreme destination is achieved by such a person. So Srila Prabhupada explains that by not following the rules and regulations of the scriptures, one becomes degraded. And there is no possibility of purification of the heart. There is no possibility of happiness. And even if one follows these rules and regulations, but it is only done mechanically and we don't come to the point of knowing God, then the following of these rules and regulations is also not very valuable. So our attempts or our knowledge is actually wasted. And if someone comes to the point of knowing God, or he accepts that God exists, but he doesn't want to serve God in the way that God wants us to serve Him, then also his attempts and efforts are wasted. So therefore one must raise oneself to the platform of Krishna consciousness to attain that perfectional stage. Krishna further continues this point and concludes the 16th chapter with the next verse, which is text 24. Tasmat shastram pramanam te karya karya vyavasthito jnatva shastra vidhanoktam
Karma kartum iharhasi. Therefore, tasmat means therefore. With therefore meaning, it refers to the previous verse, that since somebody who doesn't follow the rules of the scriptures attains neither happiness, nor a good destination, nor the supreme destination, nor any form of perfection, therefore, Shastram Pramanante, based on the Praman or the evidence of the Shastra, based on the information given in the Shastra, Karya, Akarya Vyavasthito. Karya means that which is to be done, Akarya means that which is not to be done. Those which are recommended activities and those which are forbidden activities. So based on the evidence of the scriptures, therefore, one must carefully perform those activities that are prescribed, and one must avoid those activities which are forbidden. Jnatva Shastra Vidhanoktam. Knowing fully well what is mentioned in the scriptures, Karma Kartum Iharhasi. One should perform activities in this world. Then one can come to the divine platform. So Krishna is giving a lot of emphasis to scripture when he speaks about these two qualities. For those who are in the spiritual world, there's no trace of any demoniac quality in them. Do they have to sit and read Bhagavad Gita to know what are the three modes of material nature? Do they have Bhagavad Gita classes in Goloka Vrindavan? The three modes of material nature, this is how you have to get rid of greed, this is how you have to get rid of anger and lust. No, they're suffused with the divine nature. The entire spiritual world is full of the divine nature. It is composed of the divine nature. It's only here in the material world that we are talking about all these things, with the idea that we can also reach there. So we should perform activities in this world in accordance with the scriptures, performing our prescribed duties and avoiding those activities that are forbidden. And ultimately, of course, all knowledge is meant for us to understand Krishna. This is something that Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita. So one who is Krishna conscious has actually reached the perfection or conclusion of all the Vedic rules and regulations. And because the Shastra is free from the four defects, it is perfect. Therefore, one is situated properly. When one follows these rules and regulations, one becomes situated in the mode of goodness. Those who don't follow these rules and regulations, they are situated in the modes of passion and ignorance. So here is another way of looking at the divine and demoniac natures. Those of a divine nature are situated in the mode of goodness. Those who are ruled by the demoniac nature are situated in the modes of passion and ignorance. So this is a second way of understanding the distinction between the divine and the demoniac. So when we are in the mode of goodness, it is very easy to follow principles of Krishna consciousness. And then we go on like this, making advancement in spiritual life and reach the perfection. We transcend even the mode of goodness to reach the spiritual platform. But those who are in the modes of passion and ignorance, it is very hard for them to understand spiritual life and even to practice the rules and regulations of spiritual life. So, one who takes shelter of the divine nature, therefore, becomes very inclined towards Krishna consciousness, and one who doesn't can't take refuge in the process of devotional service or Krishna consciousness. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has made some very interesting comments about this chapter. He says in the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, in the very beginning, Krishna speaks about an inverted ashwatha tree, a banyan tree, urdhva moolam adhashakam ashwatham prahurabhyayam, which is inverted.
And this tree represents the material world. Now, in this material world, the tree, the banyan tree of the material world, its roots have been described, its branches have been described, the twigs and the leaves have been described. But some things have not been mentioned. What is the one thing that has not been mentioned there, which is normally the part of a tree? Fruit. In the 15th chapter, there is no mention of the fruits of this tree. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that topic is reserved for the 16th chapter. So these two types of fruits that are found on the tree of the material world, the banyan tree of the material world, they are the divine nature and the demoniac nature. So this is very interesting. So there are both types in this world. You have both the divine and you also have the demoniac. So the divine nature, now let's come to 5th verse please of the 16th chapter. So now Krishna is going to explain that what is the result of eating these two fruits. If you eat the fruit of the divine nature, what's your destination? If you eat the fruit of the demoniac nature, then what is your destination? So let's chant the 5th verse of the 16th chapter. Daivi sampad vimokshaya Nibandhaya surimata Ma shuchaha sampadam daivim Abhijatosi Pandava. Daivi Sampad. Sampad means quality, as I have mentioned. Daivi means divine. So Daivi Sampad Vimokshaya. Moksha means liberation from the cycle of birth and death. So those who have divine qualities, they moved automatically, they are led. The result of that, or it's conducive to the path of liberation. Vimokshaya. Nibandhaya, asurimata. Whereas the demoniac qualities are conducive for bondage. So this is the third distinction between the two. Those who have divine qualities or those who are possessed of the divine qualities, their life is conducive to the path of liberation from this world. And for the demoniac people, their life is conducive to bondage from this world. So which is better? Which of the two fruits is better? The divine. So what are the reasons the divine is better? Number one, because even when we are in this world, by following the divine nature, we can be happy. And later, when we leave this world, we will become liberated from the cycle of birth and death. So this is the distinction between the two. So Krishna is encouraging Arjuna. Ma shuchaha, don't worry Arjuna. Once he has mentioned the two types of natures, the divine nature leads to liberation, the demoniac nature leads to bondage. Ma shuchaha, but don't worry Arjuna, don't be afraid. Where have you heard this Ma Shuchaha before? Which verse? Sarva dharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshishami Ma Shuchaha. What is the meaning of Ma Shuchaha? Do not fear. So every now and then Krishna encourages Arjuna and assures him, don't worry. Don't be fearful. When you become my devotee, you have nothing to fear. So again he says the same thing. Because after having mentioned that the divine nature leads to liberation, demoniac nature leads to bondage, Arjuna may be thinking, oh, what if I have the demoniac nature? Then I'll be in the path of bondage. So Krishna tells him, Ma Shuchaha, don't fear, don't worry. Sampadam daivim abhijatosi Pandava. O Pandava, you have been born, abhijataha. With what? Daivim sampadam. So you don't have to worry, O Arjuna. because you have been born with the divine qualities. So therefore, for you, the path of liberation is opened up. A very important point this is actually. Because what is the importance that birth plays? We'll talk about it in a few moments. It's interesting that Krishna has mentioned this abhijataha asi. Pandava, you are born with the divine qualities. So, of course, we may have demoniac qualities and we're trying to curb them and to destroy them and nourish our divine qualities so they grow. But Krishna here is speaking about being born with divine qualities. What a wonderful thing that would have been if we had all been born with divine qualities, like Arjuna. So that is a very, very important point, and we'll come to it in a few moments. Now, all these qualities are actually visible in a pure devotee of the Lord. The divine qualities that Krishna speaks about in verses 1 to 3 of the 16th chapter, and we'll discuss that. Each of these qualities we will discuss. He talks about it in the 16th chapter, first few verses. Now, a few words about the first 3 verses that talk about the divine nature. And after that, the rest of the chapter is devoted to demoniac nature. Because Krishna understands that the demoniac nature is so prominent in the material world that he better give a lot of importance to that. So in 3 verses he finishes the discussion on the divine qualities. Therefore these 3 verses are very powerful. It's very important for us to understand what these 3 verses say. Because after all, that's our aspiration, that's our goal, that's what we want to be. We want to be possessed of the divine nature. So we must have clarity about what it means to be divine. Just following rules and regulations of the scripture is fine, but it's a little vague. It's not so clear. What does it mean? What kind of qualities actually are there in a divine person? But before that, I'll tell you a little story from the Gita Mahatmya pertaining to the 16th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. In the ancient town that is presently called Surat in Gujarat, there used to live a king called Khadgabahu. And he was a very valiant warrior. And in his kingdom, in his palace, in his army, he had some elephants, because as you know, elephants and horses were used in warfare in those days. So there was one particular elephant who was very, very passionate. And he had liquid oozing from his temples. That's usually what happens when an elephant becomes very, very mad and intoxicated. So one time this elephant, for some reason, became so passionate that he broke free from the chains that were tying him, and he ran amok in the city. He ran helter-skelter and he just killed so many people. He crushed buildings and destroyed many, many things. And there was chaos all through the city. People were running here and there to save themselves from this mad elephant who was running everywhere. I don't know how many of you have seen an elephant? Oh yeah, you've gone to the zoo, yes. But outside of the zoo, how many of you have seen an elephant? Really? Okay. Maybe in Mayapur you saw. Yes. All very clever, very intelligent. But outside of captivity, have you seen any elephant? How many? Wild elephant? Yes? Okay, very nice. So wild elephants, actually elephants are very intelligent creatures. But if you provoke them, then there's nobody as destructive as them. So there was one incident I read in the newspaper that one elephant went mad. I think it was in some place in India, Kerala, somewhere, and he destroyed a house.
he kicked the house to pieces. All the residents of the house fled when this elephant came to the house. And then there was rubble. The whole house had collapsed in rubble. And as the elephant left, he heard the sound of a small baby crying from the rubble. Elephants being very intelligent, this elephant understood that there's a baby in the rubble there. So immediately stopped in his tracks, even though he was very angry, because when an elephant is angry, that's how he acts, he breaks everything. So he calmed down, he came back, he removed the rubble, and so that the baby who was inside would be free, and he was lying there, uncovered now, and quietly walked away after having destroyed the house. So elephants are like that. So this elephant was running amok everywhere. Information reached the ears of the king. He was an expert elephant tamer, but even he was afraid to do anything looking at this mad elephant. The soldiers came, they all tried to control him. Meanwhile, there was one Brahmana who had taken his bath in the river and was peacefully walking back towards his residence. And then he saw the mad elephant creating havoc, mayhem, right in front of him. But he was least disturbed. He was walking peacefully towards on the road, and the elephant happened to be there in the path, and everybody started shouting, "Please, run away, run away, this is a mad elephant." This Brahmana had been chanting the first 3 verses of the 16th chapter, which talk about the divine nature. So he was chanting and chanting these verses as he was walking. And when he came near the elephant and he was chanting these verses, suddenly the elephant became calm. He lost all his anger and he sat down on the floor, on the ground. And then the Brahmana stroked his head to calm him down and walked ahead. And everyone was astonished. And news reached the king that this is what the Brahmana has done. So he approached the king, the Brahmana, and said, "Please teach me, what is it you were chanting that made this miracle possible?" So he explained, "I was chanting the 16th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Especially I was chanting the first 3 verses which describe the divine nature." So then the king also memorized those verses. And then he was chanting and chanting and chanting every day. Many times every day he was chanting. And now that the elephant had been again tamed and brought back into the shed, this time he ordered, "Now release the elephant." Now all the citizens were thinking, what has happened to our king now? Already this elephant has created so much havoc before. Although by the Lord's grace he happened to be controlled by the Brahmana, but the king wants to release the elephant again. What if he creates a havoc again? But the king said, "No, release him." And when the elephant was released, he was also very calm and peaceful. He didn't create any trouble for anybody. So the king Khadgabahu became so absorbed in his chanting of Bhagavad Gita, eventually became so Krishna conscious that he handed over the kingdom, the reins of the kingdom to his son, placed him on the throne, and left for the forest to become fully Krishna conscious. So that explained that in this part of the Gita Mahatmya, the glories of the 16th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita are explained. So I'm sure now that you've heard this story, you want to know what are those 3 verses. But I would not recommend that you try to imitate that Brahmana or the king. There's maybe I can't do it for an elephant, but maybe for a wild dog or something I will try it. What works for somebody may not always work for everybody else. It will work in the sense of purification of the heart, but we may not be able to tame elephants and wild animals with that. But these stories are given, they're factual stories, but they're given to make us understand the power and the importance of certain sections of the scriptures. So we learn some valuable lessons from them. So shall we now come to the first 3 verses of the 16th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita.
Yes, so these are the first 3 verses. No more mad elephants in our life now, once we chant them. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Abhayam Sattva Samshuddhi Jnana Yoga Vyavasthitihi Danam Damascha Yajnascha Svadhyayastapa Arjavam Ahimsa Satyamakrodha Tyagah Shantirapayshunam Daya Bhuteshvalo Luptvam Mardavam Hirachapalam Tejah Kshama Dhriti Shaucham Adroho Natimanita Bhavanti Sampadam Daivim Abhijatasya Bharata Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Abhayam Sattva Samshuddhi Jnana Yoga Vyavasthitihi Danam Damascha Yajnascha Svadhyayastapa Arjavam Ahimsa Satyamakrodha Tyagah Shantirapayshunam Daya Bhuteshvalo Luptvam Mardavam Hirachapalam Tejah Kshama Dhriti Shaucham Adroho Natimanita Bhavanti Sampadam Daivim Abhijatasya Bharata. There is a certain charm in chanting these verses, isn't it? Just the sound of the mantras and the way we chant them all together is very purifying. It's very inspiring. These are not ordinary words. These are transcendental words because they have been spoken by Krishna. So every syllable of these verses of the Bhagavad Gita or any other verse of the Bhagavad Gita is transcendental. Even if we don't understand what the verses mean, if we simply chant them with faith and devotion, they will create a wonderful effect, transcendental effect in our heart. Then imagine if we chant not just with faith and devotion, but also with proper understanding, how much more taste and nectar it will give into our life. So we should actually practice chanting these verses. And we should take care to try to pronounce them also clearly. We should go word for word and try to see the proper pronunciation, understand the meaning. We can spend a whole lifetime like this absorbed in just the Bhagavad Gita. Then what to speak of Srimad Bhagavatam and many other wonderful scriptures. So let's chant it one more time, because 3 times makes it auspicious. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Abhayam Sattva Samshuddhi Jnana Yoga Vyavasthitihi Danam Damasya Yajnascha
Svadhyayastapa arjavam ahimsa satyam akrodha tyagah shantirapayshunam daya bhuteshvalo luptvam mardavam hirachapalam tejah kshamadhritih shaucham adroho natimanita bhavanti sampadam daivim abhijatasya bharata. Srila Prabhupada's translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, fearlessness, purification of one's existence, cultivation of spiritual knowledge, charity, self-control, performance of sacrifice, study of the Vedas, austerity, simplicity, non-violence, truthfulness, freedom from anger, renunciation, tranquility, aversion to fault-finding, compassion for all living entities, freedom from covetousness, gentleness, modesty, steady determination, vigor, forgiveness, fortitude, cleanliness, and freedom from envy and from the passion for honor. These transcendental qualities, O scion of Bharata, not son actually, it should be scion, S-C-I-O-N. Scion means descendant. Son, Arjuna is not the son of Bharata. So this is a misprint. These transcendental qualities, O scion of Bharata, belong to godly men endowed with divine nature. Now, before we start discussing these transcendental qualities, let me discuss the second half of the last of these three verses. Can we come back to the Sanskrit verses, please? Bhavanti sampadam daivim abhijatasya bharata. So Bhavanti means are. He is referring to all the aforementioned or above mentioned qualities. So these are sampadam daivim. These are the divine qualities, transcendental qualities. Abhijatasya bharata. So, O scion of Bharata, these are the qualities of one who is born with these transcendental, born of the transcendental nature. So the word abhijatasya is very important. It means that a person is generally born with these qualities. It doesn't mean that we can't cultivate and that we should not cultivate these qualities, but it is important to know that there are many fortunate souls who are born with the divine qualities. The Acharyas have explained that sometimes when the birth takes place at an auspicious time, from parents with auspicious qualities, and when other auspicious purificatory ceremonies have been performed, then the child will be born with divine qualities. In the Vedic culture, there is a word that is called samskaras. You've all heard this word, samskar. What is the meaning of samskar? Would anyone like to say? Sorry? Purificatory rituals. or ceremonies, that which purifies, that which makes perfect. Kar means to do, some means perfect. That which makes perfect, like Samskrita, that which is very refined, that which makes us refined, which makes us pure. So samskaras are certain purificatory ceremonial observances which actually purify everyone who performs them. So since human life is meant for spiritual progress, it is meant for getting rid of the demoniac nature and strengthening the divine nature within us. These samskars are essential. Because by performing this samskara, we actually nourish the divine qualities, we create an auspicious situation, and the demoniac qualities are also subdued somewhat. They assist us in the actual process of Krishna consciousness. Ultimately, the purification takes place by the holy names of the Lord, by hearing and chanting and serving Krishna directly. However, these sorts of other purificatory rituals are also very important. And even for these rituals, the heart of these rituals is the holy names of the Lord. There are many sanskars given in the Vedic Dharma Shastras. Some people say 16, some people say 12, some people say 10 are the major ones. So it's called Dashavidha Samskara. Srila Prabhupada mentions many times the 10-fold samskaras in his lectures, in his purports and so on. And it's interesting that these samskaras are done, I think it's fine, yeah. These samskaras are done from before birth to after death for any given individual. That means they're not only done by ourselves, not only we do it for ourselves, but even before we were able to do it, somebody else does it for us. And after we have gone, somebody else still does it for us. So just see the Vedic conception. It is so broad. It is so long-term and in its vision, which is the very first samskar. Punsavana, no, that comes much later. Garbhadhana samskar. And which is the last one? Shraddha, the Antyeshti Kriya, the Shraddha ceremony, samskara. Some people accept it as a samskar, some don't, but it's very much a part of the whole process. Is a sound coming from somewhere? Okay. No, it's maybe not here. Yes, maybe. Yes. So, before we were born, we couldn't have done it ourselves, could we? So somebody else has done it for us. And after we die, of course, we can't come back and do our own funeral ceremony. So somebody else does it for us. And even in childhood, we are too young to know anything about anything. So somebody else does it for us. So all these purificatory rituals are very helpful in the Vedic literature for bringing us up to the divine platform. So any culture, any civilized culture, the Vedic culture, they have this system where the purification takes place. Various means of purification, because civilization means purification of the heart. Any civilization that doesn't focus on purification of the heart, of all the unwanted things, of all the demoniac propensities, of all the asuri sampada, the demoniac qualities, if a civilization doesn't focus its culture on the purification of the heart from all these unwanted items which are called anarthas, then that civilization, from the Vedic point of view, is not considered an advanced civilization. Now coming to the first samskar, Garbhadhana samskar. It is by doing this samskar actually, Srila Prabhupada has also explained it a couple of places, and the Acharyas have explained in the commentary to this first verse also, first 3 verses, that when one has been fortunate enough that one's parents have done the Garbhadhana samskar, and then one is born of parents with auspicious qualities and with at an auspicious time and so on, then one is born with these divine qualities. So the Garbhadhana samskar is essentially a preparatory act for the mother and the father. Before the mother and father of the to-be child conceive the child, they have to prepare themselves spiritually. It's a very serious process. And the whole family is aware. Everybody is aware that now the husband and wife are going to come together to actually conceive. So there is a festival, there is a celebration, there is an occasion where various things are done, the chanting of the holy names and other rituals also take place. And then there is some fasting, there is some austerity to be done by the husband and wife. And they always pray very strongly to the Supreme Lord Krishna that please send a very divine soul who can come as our child. With intense prayer, with intense chanting of the holy name and other accompanying supplementary ritualistic activities, the consciousness of the mother and father is prepared. So they become very divine in their consciousness. So this prayer to the Lord is very important. Of course, in the Vedic culture, there were very elaborate rituals for what was to be done. And sometimes devotees also may do it. But Srila Prabhupada gave a very simplified version of this. He said basically the husband and wife should chant at least 50 rounds of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And they should fast a little bit, they should not be distracted by any materialistic influences. They should keep themselves absorbed in chanting and reading Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita and so on, doing kirtan, chanting. Keep their consciousness completely pure and calm. And when that is done, then they are ready for the act of conception. At that time, Krishna, acting through the laws of nature, will send a divine soul. A soul who is not fully pure yet, of course, but who is substantially pure. And according to the laws of nature, then that soul, a particular soul will come in and then will be born through that couple. So this is a very important point. So every soul is destined to get certain parents, and every parent is destined to get a certain child. So then that soul enters into the father and then into the mother and then remains in the mother's womb for several months and then comes out. So the Acharyas explain that for one who has done this Garbhadhana, then a child with divine qualities comes if one is done very carefully. I was told of this one lady in India. She's not a devotee as we understand the term, but she was an educator. She was a professor in a college in India. And she found that the college students were too unruly and uncultured, and it was too hard to change their consciousness because they were already so spoilt. At this age, it was very hard to change them. You know, college students, they do everything nowadays that shouldn't be done. There's hardly any element of the divine qualities to be found in university campuses now. All the demoniac influences are found there. So then she said, let me go to the school children. So she became a school teacher. Because it is these children are younger. So maybe I'll be able to give them good samskars here, good impressions. I'll be able to give them some good qualitative inputs. But then she found that even then it's too late. These children are also too spoiled. And nowadays, of course, I think in some respects the Western countries are better. In India, all day they watch television and they watch mundane cinema, mundane songs, and they're exposed to so many unfavorable influences. So they found that these children are also spoiled. It's too late to do anything about it. Then she thought deeply and she said, I know the reason why. Because none of these children have been born via the Garbhadhana samskara. No purification, no samskaras have been done for them. So they are all born with demoniac qualities. Tiny, tiny Rakshasas and Asuras born. All intended to create havoc all over the world. And the more the atmosphere becomes demoniac, the more you have, these small demons getting born and who are destined to create havoc in the future in the world. They may look very cute and nice and sweet and they're small and you may tickle them and you may smile and do everything. When they grow up, then they're not so cute anymore, not so sweet anymore. Then they will really wreak havoc upon the world. So, in any case, so then she, in all seriousness, went about. Did I tell this incident last time? No, I didn't. Because I did that seminar last year on family, right? Grihastha ashram. So anyway, she decided that I will now popularize the Garbhadhana samskar. So she went to many, many young couples, hundreds of young couples, wherever she could find receptive couples, young couples, and who were planning to conceive a child. And then she talked to them about it, and then she had them undergo the Garbhadhana samskar in all seriousness. Of course, most of them probably were not regular devotees as we understand the term. They must have been pious people somewhat, had some faith in the Vedic culture and the scriptures, but maybe not so much knowledge or understanding. But in any case, she went through the process. After some years, she founded a school in some place. And this school, I believe, now has 200 or 300 children, all between the ages of 5 and 7. And every one of these children was born through this process, through the Garbhadhana samskar. So that is her way of creating a revolution in the society. It has to start at that stage. By the time the child is born also, it's not too late, but it's quite late. Because already you don't know which soul has come into that body. So many souls are waiting for a next life, you see. So we don't know which kind of soul has come in there. But when the parents prepare themselves spiritually in all seriousness, and then they do the Garbhadhana samskar like this, then the acharyas say, then the child that is born will very likely be born with a divine quality. I met some devotees in other places, and this devotee is very serious about these things. He meticulously did all the samskaras. And then he was saying, I can see the difference. These children are so well-behaved and so divinely endowed. He said, I'm actually experiencing this. So imagine a whole society in which these purificatory things are done. We'll have a society of little saints who are born, of divine people, transcendental personalities who are born into this world to do good to the world, so that this world can become like Vaikuntha. You know the story of how Prahlad happened to be born? There's one Puranic Katha, one story in the Puranas about this, that Hiranyakashipu, as you know, wanted to become very, very powerful, the most powerful living entity in the universe. So he wanted to go and perform austerities to please Lord Brahma and get benedictions from him. So he went to the forest. And meanwhile, there was this bird that was there. And that bird kept chanting the name of Lord Narayan. It was a whole ploy. This bird kept chanting Narayan, 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 and this was irritating like anything to Hiranyakashipu. It was the last thing he wanted to hear. Because he didn't like Narayan or Vishnu or Krishna. Krishna was his enemy, was his competitor as far as he could see it. So he just wanted to be the Lord of the entire universe. So then he was getting disturbed in his concentration, in his austerities. And it was irritating him. So he tried to shoo away the bird and then got back to his austerity. Again the bird would come. Again he would shoo it away. Again the bird would come. And finally, after a prolonged period when this bird kept on chanting the Lord's names and Hiranyakashipu just could not continue his austerities, he came back home. And so his wife Kayadu asked him, what happened? You went for performing austerities for many thousands of years and you're back so soon. So then this is what happened, Hiranyakashipu said. This bird, I don't know where he came from. He was chanting this Narayan, Narayan all the time and caused such a disturbance to my mind. So Kayadu was actually very unlike her husband. So she heard, really? So she wanted the name of Narayan or Vishnu to come from Hiranyakashipu's mouth. So she tricked him. What was the bird saying? She heard it very well, but she wanted it to come again from his mouth. Oh, he said Narayan, Narayan. Sorry, I didn't hear, I was busy. What did he say? So she made her husband chant the names of Narayan again and again and again, like this. And he had already heard the name. And then Prahlad was conceived. Of course, Prahlad had a history from the previous life too. But then a suitable jiva is chosen who can then be born into a certain qualified mother's womb. Of course, Hiranyakashipu was not qualified, but somehow, because the holy names were chanted and the Lord had his own plan, so Hiranyakashipu was fortunate enough to have such a great soul appear as his son. So that's how Prahlad appeared as the son of Hiranyakashipu and Kayadu. So there's one more story that comes to my mind from the time of Maharaj Ranjit Singh, who was a king in Punjab several centuries ago. And I don't know if this story is historically corroborated by historians or not, but this is something I've heard about. One time in his kingdom, it so happened that there was some commotion going on. Maharaj Ranjit Singh would get always information of what was happening in his kingdom, because that's the duty of a king. The king must know all the news, what is happening everywhere. So he heard one incident one day. His spies came and reported that there was this incident when there was a cow who was wandering here and there, grazing, and then she put her head in between some bars of iron that was like a fence to eat grass on the other side of the fence, and then she couldn't pull her head back again because the horns were blocking them, the withdrawal of the head. So the horns were getting stuck with the fence. So she was struggling and struggling and struggling, and many people started gathering around. And they tried to help the cow to bring its head out from there, but somehow the cow was not cooperating and she became scared and she couldn't take the head out. Then everyone started discussing, what shall we do? How shall we release this cow? What shall be done? Someone said something, another person said something. Then one person said, let's just cut off her horns. Then very easily she'll come out. So then this person, he reported this matter to the king and said, this is what the different people were saying here. So Ranjit Singh was eager to hear what everybody said. So when he heard that one person said that we should cut off the horns of the cow, he said, what? Who is that person who said that? Call him here. So he had him called to his presence in the court. He said, what is your name? He told his name. He said, I think you are not born in the Vedic culture, I think. What kind of religion do you follow? He said, no, I follow. He said, no, I don't believe you. Who is your mother? Call your mother. So he called the mother. Mother was really scared. What happened? What has my son done? Nothing. Your son is... Tell me about your son's background. Why is he speaking like this? So she said, well, I don't know. Then she said, tell me about your experiences. What happened just when he was born, just before he was born? What happened? So then she was narrating various incidents, and then she said, yes. You see, when I was just about to give birth, I was in labor, and there's a window next to my room. And just as I was in labor and my son was about to be born, I looked out of the window, and in the distance, on the roof of another building, I saw this man who was actually a butcher. He's a butcher by profession. So I saw him, and the moment I saw him, I immediately remembered what he does. So I thought of him killing animals and so on and so forth. Those thoughts crossed my mind as I was looking at him, and just then my son was born. So Ranjit Singh said, yes, that's the answer. That's the reason why this man spoke like this, because how can you think of harming a cow? A cow is considered very sacred, isn't it, in the Vedic culture? So how could this man, who was otherwise born in a pious family, think of harming a cow like this by cutting off its horns? And so the mystery was solved, because the mother was exposed to this influence only incidentally and momentarily. And therefore it gave rise to just a momentary impression in that child's mind, which came out later on in age as this activity. These things are so subtle. Gahana karmano gatihi. The intricacies and the ways of karma are extremely difficult for us to understand. But suffice it to say that the impressions of a yet to be born child, whether in the womb or just born, they are very, very impressionable, the consciousness. It's like wet clay. If you step in wet clay, your footprints remain there. So the impressions in those months are very, very important. If we want to have the future generations born with divine qualities, because Krishna has said, Abhijatasya sampadam daivim, that one is born with these divine qualities. So we'll come to the point of how we can revive these divine qualities and subdue the demoniac qualities now that we are already born. But let's also consider how we can give rise to a future generation of children who are born with divine qualities. So these things are very important. We have to consider questions of samskaras. So therefore, of course, it's a big topic. In every home, there must be constant some kirtan going on. There must be spiritual activities going on. There must be worship going on. And so that everyone in the house will have a very pure consciousness. And especially when children are expected, children are planned or conceived, or children are expected in a short while, in a few months, at that time especially the atmosphere must become very, very transcendentally surcharged at home. There must be no unpleasant experiences, no tensions, no undue materialistic influences on the consciousness, especially of the mother. No stress and strain, very pleasant atmosphere, good health, very pleasant sattvic food. Prabhupada says a couple of times, I remember, he says that no pungent food, no oil, spicy food. One should have very sattvic food, prasadam. So these things are very conducive to eventually creating the consciousness of the to-be child in a way that he or she will be endowed with divine qualities. So now let's discuss some of these qualities. What is the time, by the way, please? Can I have a watch over here? Till what time do we have, I think? 1 o'clock, okay. So for another few minutes, we'll just talk about some of these qualities. And after lunch, when we have our next session, we'll come back and discuss the other qualities. So can we come back to the description? Okay, keep it there. So the first quality that Krishna, there are 26 qualities, by the way, 26 divine qualities that Krishna talks about. And the first one is called Abhayam. Incidentally, Srila Prabhupada in his purports speaks about the first three qualities, Abhayam, Sattva Samshuddhihi and Jnana Yoga Vyavasthitihi, with reference to sannyasis. Abhayam means fearlessness, Sattva Samshuddhihi means purification of one's existence, and Abhayam or Jnana Yoga Vyavasthitihi means to be situated in the pursuit of knowledge. So because these three are especially connected to the sannyasis, not that others shouldn't have it, but especially it is relevant for the sannyasis. He starts off with Abhayam, fearlessness. And what is the meaning of fearlessness really? Fearlessness to me, Prabhupada says, means to know that I am never alone. Krishna as a super soul is always with me. He will always protect me. Even if I am in the deep, dark forest, all alone by myself, I am still not alone. I am with Krishna. Krishna is always with me. He is my ever well-wisher and he will always protect me. This firm conviction, Srila Prabhupada says, is called fearlessness. That comes about because of very staunch faith in the Lord. Now, it's not only someone who lives in the middle of the forest all alone who needs to think like this. Even us living in the midst of Sydney or Melbourne or anywhere, we also need to be fearless. Because this material world is a very fearful place. There's so many things that come up that cause fear in our hearts. Every moment is a moment of anxiety for us. There's fear of so many things. Fear of death, fear of disease, fear of accidents, fear of pain, fear of losing a loved one, fear of loss of money, fear of not being able to be, not enjoying this world, freedom or fear of being dishonored in this world. So many types of fear. But when one becomes fixed in Krishna consciousness, then one knows no fear. Bhajahu re mana Shri Nanda Nandana Abhaya Sharanara Vindare. So one preaches to the mind and says, "Oh mind, just be fearless. Focus your mind on the hearing and chanting of Krishna's glories. Focus yourself on the lotus feet of Krishna and you will be fearless." Prahlad was fearless. What kind of trials and tribulations and harassment he had to undergo at the hands of his father and his cohorts. He was physically attacked with sharp weapons. He was placed in fire. He was placed in pits of poisonous snakes. He was thrown from the top of a cliff. He was thrown under the feet of a mad, intoxicated elephant. Well, Prahlad may not have chanted the first 3 verses of 16th chapter, but he was remembering Krishna. He was protected by Krishna himself. And in so many ways, Hiranyakashipu tried to kill him. And there are many wonderful things about this. One of the wonderful things is that not a hair on Prahlad's body was harmed. But even more wonderful than this is that all through this, never once was Prahlad fearful. He always had faith. Rakhe Krishna mare Krishna rakhe ke. If Krishna wants to kill, who can protect? And if Krishna wants to protect, who can kill? So if Krishna wants his body of mine to be destroyed, well, so be it. It's Krishna's property. And if Krishna wants it to happen, then it will happen. I cannot protect myself like that. And if Krishna wants to protect this body, what can my father do? He may be the most powerful person in the universe, but he will not be able to harm me if Krishna is protecting me. So whenever these things were happening, these assaults were happening upon him, Prahlad was simply standing there with folded hands, remembering the Lord, absorbed in the ecstasy of remembrance of Krishna, completely unmoved by all the commotion going on around him. Similarly, Ambarish Maharaj, when Durvasa Muni plucked out a hair from his head and made a Rakshasa, demon, to attack Ambarish Maharaj. Ambarish Maharaj was completely equipoised and peaceful. If Krishna wants to kill me, so be it. So this staunch faith in Krishna's protection constitutes fearlessness. So we all have chance, we will have sufficient chances in our day-to-day life to practice this. There will be so many occasions where some fear comes up in our mind. Whenever we stop thinking of Krishna, there is fear. It is likely some form of fear will come up. Bhayam dvitiya bhiniveshatah syad ishatapetasya viparyayo smritihi. The 11th canto of the Bhagavatam, it says that fear arises because our mind is absorbed in something other than Krishna. That is Maya. So when we absorb our mind in Maya or in the material world, then we become fearful, we become anxious. So the focus to become, or the way to become free from fear is actually to become Krishna conscious. And then Krishna awards us this fearlessness, I beg your pardon. You all know the story of how Lord Ram came to the shore of the sea and was about to cross over to Lanka. And then Vibhishan came. He was driven out from Lanka by his older brother Ravana, because Vibhishan advised Ravana to return Sita to Ram. And Ravana was infuriated to hear this. So he banished his brother and said, I'm not killing you because you're my brother, but actually you're an enemy in the guise of a friend. So you leave this place immediately and go. So Vibhishan left and arrived at Lord Ram's camp, where all the monkey soldiers and the bear soldiers were waiting to cross over the sea. When the monkey soldiers saw him, they all caught him, they arrested him. And many of them were thinking that he should be killed because he is a messenger of the enemy. He is a brother of Ravana. Therefore we should kill him. So there was much difference of opinion, different people, the devotees, Sugriva, Angada, Nila, and all that was saying different things. Finally, the matter came to Lord Ram. Lord Ram immediately understood that Vibhishan has taken genuine shelter of me. Because the Lord is in everybody's heart, so he understands our heart. So he understood that Vibhishan was not deceiving him or the monkey soldiers. He was genuine. In his heart, he had actually surrendered to Lord Ram and he wanted to become his devotee. So Lord Ram said, now I'm duty bound to accept him. And then he said, Sakrad eva prapanno yastavasmiti chayachate abhayam sarvada tasmai tadam yetad vratam mama. He said, even once if someone comes up to me and says from his heart, my dear Lord, Tava Asmi, I am yours. From that very moment on, I award this devotee complete fearlessness. That is my promise. It's my vow. Vratam mama. So this is also Krishna's promise. If we surrender to him and go up to him and say, my dear Lord, I am yours. I am in your shelter. Please protect me. Then Krishna will certainly protect us and give us fearlessness. So this transcendental quality of fearlessness will come by developing the quality of surrender to Krishna. Consciously taking shelter of Krishna and intensifying the spirit of surrender and shelter. The more we do that, the more we will see we will become fearless in life. So we'll talk about these other qualities later in the next session. And then we'll also be talking about, of course, the demoniac qualities. It's very, very important. So we have a few minutes, maybe 2 or 3 minutes or 5 minutes for questions if you have. If anyone has questions, please raise your hand or any comments. Yes, it's a question.
Thank you very much, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Maharaj, you were talking about Garbhadhana Samskara and purification, and that begins before the soul enters the womb of the mother. Now, most people haven't done Garbhadhana Samskaras who are already in an advanced stage within ISKCON. Parents are trying to do whatever that within their means to bring the child into Krishna consciousness. Now, you mentioned a specific aspect of ritualistic samskaras also, out of which then the Upanayana samskara is also mentioned as part of that. So on one hand, we see that from the Vedic ritualistic point of view that is mentioned. However, in our movement, it is usually encouraged at the time of second initiation, when the child takes shelter of a spiritual master as he grows up and then becomes qualified to chant the Gayatri Mantra. So, whereas we also hear from our tradition that it is still better to put to do the Upanayanam for the son, because at least there is some control that will be there on the son. So, how do we reconcile both this for a decision in our lives?
Well, you see, we focus on the devotional content of rituals. Because we are devotees and we have the goal of pure Krishna consciousness very clear in our mind, so we will only accept those rituals that will help us in our devotional progress. Or we will do those aspects of rituals that will help us in Krishna consciousness directly, or we will Krishnaize certain rituals. Like, for example, I mentioned that there are elaborate procedures to be followed for the Garbhadhana Samskara, but Srila Prabhupada realized that he had gone to the Western countries, not to expect everybody to do all these things. It was too much, because they weren't familiar with any of these things. Even in India now they're not familiar nowadays, so what to speak of other countries. So he just gave the essential point. The essential point of purification is chanting the holy names. So he said, all right, chant 50 rounds every day. Not every day, but on that day. And maybe a few days before, if you like. So this way he Krishnaized the whole process. So similarly now, there are two aspects to the cultivation of the divine qualities. One is here and now, as is, where is. Whatever condition we are in now and our children are in now, we do the best we can by the practice of sadhana bhakti, by creating a very favorable atmosphere for devotional service for us, our family members, and for the devotee community, and for others as well. So we do our best. At the same time, for those who will conceive a child in future, now we can advise them, we can help them, so that they will prepare in advance. So the other part of it, they will also do. So we prepare it both ways. So when it comes to certain rituals, well, there are some that we may do in Krishna consciousness and some that we don't do. In Krishna consciousness, as devotees generally, the Upanayana is taken care of at the time of initiation from the spiritual master. So that is done at that stage. So even children must be prepared from childhood to become qualified for initiation at younger ages. By young, I mean by the time they're in the mid-teens or so, they should be ready. In most cases they are not, but if the atmosphere is sufficiently favorable, then they might. So if they are well trained and if the atmosphere is favorable enough, then by the time they're 15 or 16, hopefully they're ready. And in case they're not, then they can wait till they become staunch enough and qualified to take initiation. All right? One more question? Yes. Yeah. By the way, you can, even if you have more questions, we are going to be together today and tomorrow. Yeah. So you can write down whatever questions, even if it pertains to this session, you want to ask in the next session, so feel free to do that. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you. I was just wondering, growing up in a Western culture and country, we're often bombarded by a lot of imagery and content that's of a sexual nature, and we see billboards and advertisements, and it's very vulgar some of the time. But recently I went to Sri Rangam, and a lot of the temples there have very erotic imagery up the front, and a lot of it's quite hardcore as well, compared to what we are exposed to because of the watchdogs here that look look at the content of the adverts and everything, but over there and I was just wondering why in such a holy dham that there are such erotic images over the gopurams and everything like that when we're visiting a temple.
Yeah, these have to do with many architectural shall we say, customs. There could be many, many reasons for these things, why these things were done. I'm not an expert on the architectural aspects, and we might inquire from some sthapatis as to why these things were done in those days. Because you see also, even though there was such imagery, but it did not have a vulgar connotation as it does today. Today everything has become vulgarized. Everything has just become so debased and gross. But there it wasn't like that. It was something different. Everything today has become sexualized. Language has become sexualized. Dress has become so. Lifestyles have become so. So everything is becoming like that. The modes of passion and ignorance has become very strong. But in those days, these things were considered a part of life where it was there, but it was not the focus. People were very much aware of the spiritual values of life, and they were there. Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha was there. There was Kama also there. It was one facet of life. But it wasn't the focus. Today, this is the focus. And as we'll see when we discuss the demoniac qualities later, this is actually the focus of the modern civilization. But in the Vedic civilization, it was not like that. The focus was on spiritual advancement. And this was one of the areas of life that was there in society. It is a reality of life, so these things were there. But generally you will see that this did not in any way distract the people, even in those days, from their spiritual endeavors. Neither did it make them vulgar. Neither did it make them do things that people in the modern day do, which would be unthinkable. People were still very, very modest in the way they dressed. Even though these cultures may be there, but if you see the people and how they lived, they were not living like that. They were very modest in their clothing, in their habits, in their practices, in their traditions, in their values. Say during the time of Ramanujacharya, like Sri Rangam, the temples was made sometime before. The deities are very old, of course, but the temples have gone through different phases of architectural construction. So at that time, at the time of Ramanuja, Yamunacharya and so on, in South Indian Tamil Nadu, this was not the atmosphere. The atmosphere was very, very traditional, very simple, modest, pure. Sometimes these things also reflect the activities of the demigods. In the demigods' planets, it's a different culture, it's a different situation, even though they are situated in the mode of goodness, but the same standards don't apply here. So these are different kinds of explanations that we can see. But the important point being that we see that the people of those days were not like this, as portrayed there. So we cannot use that as a reason to justify the way the modern world is today. So we have to see their spiritual focus very clearly. Okay? All right, so we'll stop here now. We have, I think, we're time for lunch, isn't it? It's a demoniac quality to keep people hungry and keep people away from lunch. So, sorry? Yes, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.